FM are live from the Aviva FanStudio at the Aviva Stadium in Dublin. We are, of course, going to look ahead to the final round of the RBS Six Nations Championship this weekend, in particular the big one for Ireland against Scotland. We're also going to talk Cheltenham, Champions League and snooker as well as all that. And I'm delighted to say we have an expert panel with us here at the Aviva FanStudio. Would you please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Gordon Darcy, David Wallace, Kevin McLaughlin, Ken Doherty and Alan Cawley. Lads, great to have you all here. We're going to talk about plenty of sporting matters over the next hour or so. We'd love to hear your thoughts, by the way, if you're listening in. If you want to get involved in the conversation, you can do so on Twitter using the hashtag AvivaFanStudio. If you follow at GameOn 2FM and tweet with the hashtag AvivaFanStudio, we'll put your questions to the panel. We do have a prize as well tonight, which is a pair of tickets for the match this weekend to the best tweet question for the lads by the end of the night. So a pair of tickets to Ireland against Scotland this weekend. And as I said, hashtag Aviva FanStudio for all your questions. For our audience here as well, we've got a signed rugby ball to give away. So if you want to have a think about any questions you'd like to ask for any of the lads, and write it down and hand them up to Andrew, and we'll get to them a little bit later on in the show. Okay, Alan, how are you?
Ian and Hugh.
Cheltenham Day 2 is over. You're still standing.
I think
you still have the shirt on your back.
I'm actually doing better than standing, Hugh.
Really?
Yeah, I'm
had
standing
a good day.
with a few quid in my pockets as well.
Very good. Very
doing
good.
Very well.
Yeah, I mean, York Hill this morning, very impressive by Ruby. And then a couple of results didn't go the way of the Mullins-Walsh combination. Underso, in particular, a very big letdown in the champion hurdle for a lot of people.
Yeah, it was a letdown because I suppose after the day Ruby had yesterday, all eyes were on Underso today, the big hop off for the day. And to be fair to sprinter Sakura, Hugh, nobody probably gave it a chance.
What a story.
In returning to the quality that it was 2 years ago. So an unbelievable training performance from Nicky Henderson, and you have to take your hat off to him.
When you look at the performance of Altior yesterday, winning the Supreme Novices, and then you take into account sprinter Sakura coming back today to win at Cheltenham, whatever about the rest of the season and beating maybe one or two decent horses, this was a champion chase with a very strong favourite. And yesterday, My 10 to Yours hasn't run for 2 years and finished second to Annie Power, who put in a record-breaking performance. Nicky Henderson's team are flying it. Yeah,
they really are, Hugh, and it's an unbelievable training feat by him, you would have to say, to get those two horses in particular back to the form that we seen yesterday and today. And it's just, I suppose I heard someone saying earlier on, that's why he's the best trainer in terms of Cheltenham over the years. I know Willie Mullins in recent years has had a lot of winners, but I think Nicky over the course of his career has been the top trainer at Cheltenham all over those years. So it's unbelievable, yeah.
No joy for Nina today on Josie's
Nina was
orders.
disappointing, yeah. And I think a lot of hopes were on Nina as well, because that's the race that they specialise in the Bulger.
Yeah.
They really target that race, and Nina was disappointing.
She was coming at the end as well, and you just felt maybe if the horse had got up a little bit sooner.
Well, they're out again on Friday with On the Fringe, so they'll be looking to kind of get people's monies back, I suppose. On Friday, and hopefully.
And obviously,
not me, of course. I've plenty of money.
No, you're laughing. I'm not going to ask you any more about that. Ken, you had a little go on Underso as well today.
Well, it's nice to hear that Alan has an expert view on horses, because he certainly doesn't have one on football. And anyway, that's for sure. He tipped Liverpool to win the league this year.
If you believe that, you believe anything.
No, it was fantastic the last couple of days watching it, and particularly Ruby Walsh. I mean, what a jockey, what a sportsman, and the way he rode Annie Power was great, particularly after what happened last year, because so many of us were on it for the fourth time last year at Cheltenham. But he redeemed himself, and it's been absolutely fantastic the last couple of days racing. Great crowds, great atmosphere. And it's great to watch,
Yeah, no, I mean, the excitement, the buzz over there.
Yeah, Hugh, just to touch on that, what Ken said, because I think Ruby's unbelievable, and I've said it how many times on the show to you, and funny that we're here tonight, obviously, with a rugby looking forward, and so much talk about Brian O'Driscoll being obviously the best sportsman in the country we've ever produced, and Roy Keane, but I think Ruby is right up there with them. When you think what he does year in, year out, over in Cheltenham on these horses, and such a difficult sport as well. I don't think people realise how difficult a sport it is.
Well, the fact that he has to basically starve himself for 9-10 months of the year. Now I know Ken starves himself as well, but he doesn't have to. You don't have to do that.
That's because I keep losing money on horses.
And he's able to play with a stick. All Ruby has is a whip.
I can't imagine Brian O'Driscoll on a horse, though. Could you? Without fair.
I tell you what,
about the right size to be a jockey, though.
Yeah, or anyone that's sitting at this table, in fact. On the horse today. Just before we get into the rugby as well, I mean, tonight, massive game for Arsenal in Barcelona. They haven't a hope, have they?
There's more chance of me talking out in that pitch on Saturday playing against Scotland than Arsenal qualifying against Barcelona.
Really?
There's actually a better chance. I think Joe Schmidt could ring me later on and say, you know what, Alan, how you fixed?
Listen, come on. It's not that impossible.
No, it is that impossible. to qualify. They might
But
score.
you have Barcelona blinkers on. I mean, talk about the horses today having blinkers. You can't see beyond Barcelona any time they play.
That's because they're the best team. Ken reckons I don't know anything about football, but I know they're the best team in the world.
Yeah.
Well, I'm actually an Arsenal supporter, and he's actually speaking
Really?
there's more chance.
Are you serious?
And I genuinely, Hugh, like speaking about it properly, they don't have a chance of qualifying. They really don't. I know it's only 2-0, but you see what Barcelona are doing at the moment in terms of them three players. These are three of the best you'll ever see. Like, it's phenomenal what they're doing. Messi's the best you'll ever see. And for Arsenal, and I wouldn't actually not give them a chance going over on good form. But as Gordon said, the March meltdown, it happens year in, year out.
Listen, you must be pulling your hair at the moment, because some of the Arsenal fans have started to turn now on Wenger. Some of the long-standing supporters who will not hear a bad word against him have started to say, actually, hang on, this is our year and you're blowing it.
Yeah, it's just so hard to know. It was our year, and it's just, as you said, the March meltdown. It's like every year you just kind of, you're waiting for it. We're going well, and then something happens, and everything just capitulates around you, and it's really hard to support that. But then you kind of have to. But at some stage, you kind of go, there has to be a change somewhere along it. And I am a supporter of Wenger. I think he's done really well. But there's one of those tweets went up, and it had Wenger manager for I think 17 odd years, 2 major trophies. And I showed Barcelona with like five managers and 19 trophies.
Yeah, I'm the same, Gordon. I've huge respect for Wenger and all that he done, and obviously coming into England and the professionalism he brought into the game as well. You would have to say it kind of started with him. But after 9 years, they obviously only won an FA Cup last year, and as Gordon said, they're just happy to be settling for fourth, getting into the Champions League, and that's great from a commercial point of view and money financially in terms of the club and the people who run it. But the fans want to see silverware now at this stage, and they're like, it's not a cheap place to go and watch football, the Emirates as well, one of the most expensive places for the fans, season tickets. So I think if they don't win the league, which I don't think they will this year, and when you think of how bad the other teams have been, the top teams, and they still won't win it, I think his days are numbered.
What price would you get on Leicester to win the Champions League next season, Ken?
Probably more than 5,000 to 1. But I'll tell you what, if Arsenal don't want Wenger, I'll tell you what, United will take him. I'd be happy with him because the sooner Van Gaal goes, I think the better.
What's the alternative? Ryan Giggs?
I don't know, probably a little bit too early, but Mourinho, I'm not really a lover of. I like his character and stuff like that, but I don't think he'd fit the job at United. But anybody bar Van Gaal at the moment, it's like the pressing times as United. It's not as bad. Gordon thinks it's bad for Arsenal, but it's certainly bad for United at the moment. But
and listen, I'm a Villa fan. It's better thought for me.
Well, we all have
Championship season ticket next year. I'm telling you. Look, we'll come back to snooker a little bit later on. But I just want to get the opinion of the lads. First of all, David, I mean, about the Italian performance last Saturday, because I think it's fair to say a lot of people thought that Ireland would win the match. I don't think too many predicted 58 points and 9 tries.
Yeah, no, I think I predicted like a 17-point win, margin, and it's obviously very pleasantly surprised. You don't really know with Italy, when they're coming over, how they're going to be, and if you get caught in an arm wrestle with them, it can be a very long day indeed. They had big performances in the championship already. But to Ireland's credit, I think they knew the game plan and they executed it brilliantly. They just wanted to play with pace, tire out Italy and play in the wide channels. So Scotland played out there and got really good gains, and as did Ireland. So yeah, I would think it was really, really positive, especially coming from, I suppose, where Ireland were, without a win in the championship. Yeah. And to get that win and to do it so comprehensively, and the subs who came off the bench as well, adding to it. But I suppose they'll be of the mindset as well not to get too carried away with it, because there was a few Italians missing. They were certainly out of it by the end of the game, and possibly a few soft tries crept in as well. But having said that, it's got to be a positive. The team will definitely take confidence from it, and some much needed confidence. They weren't that far off against a really good English team, and 1 point loss in France isn't that bad, and a really good Welsh team, a draw. So fine margins, and if they had taken a couple of opportunities, maybe we'd be sitting in a very different position. But I think they can take confidence coming into this game. But it'll be a tough Scotland opposition.
Kevin, did any part of you feel sorry for Sergio Parise at that final whistle? He just looked like a beaten man. I mean, mentally and physically, because I'm sure he's wondering, no matter how well he plays, he needs his teammates to play with him. And on that day, last Saturday, just didn't have that.
Yeah, I have huge admiration for him because no matter what's going on, he steps up for Italy every week, and he just does the business time after time, and he doesn't have anyone kind of following him into battle. It's very, very tough, and must be very tough mentally, but tough physically as well, because he probably carries about 20 balls every game.
Yeah.
He even tries to take match-winning drop kicks from them at this stage, which is verging on
I was in Paris for that.
Yeah, which is verging on the ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of the game at the weekend, I think.
Hang on. This guy taking any drop kicks in his career, Gordon? Is that right?
We've seen a few in training, and they're not pretty.
I was given a lifetime ban of kicking in games after my performance in training. Yeah. So, but yeah, just going back to the game at the weekend, I think like Italy, I think had possibly 14 players missing. They just can't absorb those kind of losses. They don't have the depth. And the positive from us is we do have the depth. We've kind of blooded a couple of guys in the last couple of weeks. The likes of Ulton Delan, Josh van der Fly are now ready to step up in the big games, which is huge for us, you know. These are really young guys that have come through the system. There's a big representation from Connacht there now as well, which is really good in terms of
yeah, well,
exactly.
that's okay. Well, I mean, let's just develop that. I mean, 5 Connacht players on the pitch at the end of the match, and I think is that just a reflection of how well they're playing this season? And
it's not only that. There's other guys knocking on the door as well. There's Matt Healy scored about 20 tries this season. He's playing really well, and the only reason he hasn't got a chance is because all the back 3 players on the Irish squad are playing so well. You look at, say, Fergus McFadden getting brought in at the weekend. Everyone's kind of doubting him, and he goes and scores a try, gets an assist, and has a huge impact, and that's the nature of the back 3. But yeah, going back to the point on Connacht, it's unbelievable for Ireland to have a new nesting ground of talent, and the likes of Ulton Delan, Matt Healy, and these types of guys coming through and putting pressure on the kind of untouchables is exactly what Joe Schmidt wants. And
can I add a woohoo as well, as I'm a Connacht man?
Connacht man knows nothing about rugby, I can tell you that much.
Well, they tell me they're great. So.
I mean, you know, the point about the strength and depth we have now, Gordon, I just think back to maybe 2007, which is less than 10 years ago, and maybe it was a perception at the time that Ireland had the starting 15, and outside of that we might have been a little bit vulnerable. Now, as you said, I mean, the players that Joe Schmidt has tried and used over the last couple of years, we're in a pretty good state now.
Yeah, like it's kind of a double-edged kind of sword at the moment, because, you know, let's not forget 3 weeks ago, before this Italy performance, we were saying what, you know, poor strength and depth we had. So that is relevant at the moment. We had 14, I think, or 13 injuries coming into the first game, and obviously the retirement of one of the most influential players in world rugby. Probably the only guy with more influence is probably Richard McCall. And we suffered as a result of it. We beat an Italian team that, let's be honest, went missing for 60 minutes in that. They lost both of their second rows. We got good parity in the scrum. More than parity in the scrum. We got a penalty whenever we went in, and we had lines. I think that game was effectively a run out for us, and I think it's going to be really good for us in the long run. But our strength and depth was definitely tested and didn't necessarily do well from the results side of things. I'm always a glass half full kind of guy. There's huge positivities from that. All the names that the lads talked about there, the Ultons, Delans, Josh van der Flyers, all the people who got experience, they learned from hard rugby, and sometimes you have to come back to go forward. You can't just stay on an upward curve all the way through. So how good our strength and depth is for me is yet to be decided, because they are only starting.
And your piece in the Irish Times today as well, you made the point that actually, look, I mean, fine, it was great to get that level of try scoring against Italy and put them away, but we do have to bring it to another level to beat Scotland. Yeah,
well, like, Scotland went to Paris and won. We didn't do that. So that's something you've got to say. You know, we had a 6-day turnaround, which Scotland now have against us, which is, you know, you can't under the lads will talk about that. You can testify to that as well. That extra day recovery is can be the difference between the last 20 minutes, and that's where we fell off in the French game, and that, you know, 6, 7, 8 minutes of scrummaging was effectively the difference in the two games. Scotland are playing really, really well. They've been that nearly team for so long. They've definitely been an upward curve. They were probably taking more from their losses in the first 3 games than we were from ours, because we were quite frustrated with theirs, but they were focusing on we're getting there, and now they've gotten that victory. So there's a huge amount of subplots going on in this game at the weekend. Ireland have kind of halted their downward momentum from the last match in the World Cup. Scotland are kind of on their upward curve.
Yeah.
And the last game, it's a strange. Unfortunately, it's the last game in the tournament kind of sets the the tone for the rest of the season. And it's the last game you can play, and you don't get a chance next week to put things right. So there's a huge amount of little undertones in the game, which I'm really looking forward to, which should make for a great game.
Okay, well, I'm going to come back to Scotland in just a second, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on Josh van der Flier as a flanker yourself, David, and how impressed have you been by him, considering, I suppose, his first cap only a couple of games ago, and how he's done since he's come into the team?
Yeah, and it was what a first cap, going over to England, and that first half was just an onslaught by England, on our line for a lot of that first half, and he's the guy who's, I suppose, in pole position to making those tackles. He's the link there between the backs and the forwards, and a lot is coming down his channel, and for a young guy. On his first cap, that was really been thrown in the deep end, and he came out so commendably, and he will grow into that position more and more. I think we saw a little bit more of his carrying ability against Italy, and he seems very composed. He obviously has a massive work rate, and I think he's I suppose going back to maybe the archetypical number 7, where he's a linker, and he's I suppose a little bit of groundhog as well, and he's that high intensity and high work rate, and is all over the park. So it's I suppose it's nice to have an option like that, for horse. When we say like horses for courses, when you're playing against a team and you need an out and out 7, then he's a great option and adds some balance to the back row.
And he's very different to someone like Sean O'Brien. Obviously, he doesn't know how he plays the game.
Yeah, I mean, Sean is we all know his carrying abilities, and is Sean a 6, 7 or an 8? He can slot in. He's the ability to play anywhere. But I suppose you're looking at him as an out and out 7. You'd wonder, is he? And you say Josh van der Flier is. Now, it's not a slight on Sean O'Brien, because he's got so many positives to his game that he can do parts of that. But van der Flier is definitely in that, I suppose, old bracket of an old number 7.
Yeah, and it's gonna pose some very interesting questions when Sean O'Brien comes back fit, when Peter O'Mahony is back in the team, and all of a sudden you have maybe 6 guys who could quite comfortably slot in. And I suppose then it's all about what Joe Schmidt wants to see from his back row. Does he want to try and accommodate Sean O'Brien with someone like Josh van der Flier? Does he go back to the O'Mahony, O'Brien, Heaslip form? Loads of questions there.
Yeah, great options, and great kind of difficulties for Joe to have to deal with. They're the exact type of problems he wants, and like you say, Josh and Shawnee are very different. You wouldn't notice Josh as much as in game. I remember a few people kind of saying after the England game, he was okay, he was in and out, but I was watching him, he got through a phenomenal amount of work. He's one of those people that literally does not stop running for a game. Hits an incredible amount of rucks, makes an incredible amount of tackles. He's got a big engine, and he's super fit guy. And just going back to Darcy's point on the depth, obviously results didn't go our way, and I kind of feel like that wasn't necessarily to do with the performance, because a couple of the results last season in the Six Nations were just as tight. And having the likes of Paulie there and that experience, even Peter O'Mahony in the team, that experience just helps you get over the line. And we weren't necessarily missing the players in terms of talent, it was more experience, and that experience with the likes of Josh and Ulton Delan will really stand to us, say, next year. So it's maybe a slight dip, but it's ultimately going to be hugely positive for the Irish team.
Ken, we talk about the fine margins in top level sport in snooker, like you miss one red, all of a sudden you lose the frame. In rugby as well, Joe Schmidt has consistently said, look, I mean, we're not far away. It's the small things that just haven't happened for us, and that's those small things go your way, all of a sudden we're unbeaten in the championship and everyone's happy about it.
It's also about confidence, and even like listening to Joe Schmidt, I think even after the World Cup, he didn't expect Ireland to win this Six Nations. He thought if they were going to finish second or third, would be a good performance. So confidence breeds everything. You need to have the confidence. You need to be able to, when the pressure comes on, that you've done your work, that you feel like you're going to perform when it's put up to you, and that's such a big part of all our games, because every game, every sport has an affinity. If your head's in the right place, you can perform. If it's not in the right place, if you got other things in your mind, you're not feeling as confident, that's going to affect your performance. So it's a huge part of the game, and I know Joe Schmidt would look into the lads will probably tell you more about that than I would, but it's a part of my game in a big way, because lots of times when I'm sitting in that chair, which is quite regular, rather than being at the table, all sorts of things go through your head. So you have to stay.
Do you have a
confident as
routine
possible.
that you go to when you know, okay, you're feeling a bit of pressure? Do you have somewhere that you go to in your head to try and get back focused?
Well, sometimes when you're sitting in that chair, you know, when you're not concentrating, when you think, Jenny, this chair is quite comfortable, you know.
Yeah.
So it's never a good sign, you know, when you start thinking about it like that. But no, sometimes you just have to keep focused on the game, focused on you watch the player quite a bit. Sometimes your mind rambles, but you have to switch off sometimes, because you can't keep focused all the time, even when the other guy's at the table, because you just burn yourself out.
Sure.
So you got to switch off a little bit, and then exactly when you come into the table, then it's your time there, you know. So it's quite, you know, all this psychology, sports psychology, it's so massive. You know, we have like only 6 inches between our ears, but sometimes it feels like 6 miles, like, you know. Sometimes when you're not there, you're just not there. No matter what you do, trying to get back into that zone is so difficult.
Some sports lend it to itself more than others, maybe, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
See the point on the experience, though. I'd be interested to hear from the lads, because I always felt the older you got, the better player you became.
Yeah.
And would you have found that kind of even with the, like, not so much in potting terms, but in kind of managing the game better, that you might be a bit more? I think
so, yeah. I mean, I look back, like when I was like 17, 18, you know, when I went over to England to play, tried to get on the professional circuit. It was like in the club, like from 10 o'clock in the morning till like leaving it at 10 o'clock at night, you know. It was nearly bringing a sleeping bag at one stage, you know.
Yeah.
But
too much practice?
Too much, yeah. I like wasted so much time, you know. Now I think when I look back on it, if you did like 3 or 4 hours and use your time in different ways, like, you know, try and understand the psychology part, trying to keep fit, what's your diet, you know, little things that you may not think even in snooker might not make a difference. But, you know, if it helps your concentration, you know, if you feel like you come to the table, you feel really good in yourself that, yeah, I'm going to perform today all the time, and you're on the ball, your concentration is sharp all the time.
Well, you look at O'Sullivan now, doesn't he run 5 or 6 miles a day?
Yeah.
The greatest that ever was, and he reckons that kind of keeps him at ease and in life and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I try to encourage even some of the other players, you know, to not do what like a lot of them did. I mean, Bill Werbenick never watched his diet or anything like that, you know what I mean? But it's certainly, or Alex Higgins even, you know. I mean, his diet was a couple of vodkas before he played, you know. But I think if it gives you that little bit, like that 1%, that might make a difference, you know. It's the same with the boys, you know, in a game, that little 1%, that little bit of an edge, even mentally, you know, it has to help, you know.
Gordon.
But it's also the thing, you know, you can't put an old head on young shoulders.
No.
So you're saying you're in there from 10 to 10, but you needed to figure out, okay, or you maybe needed to do that amount of hours to go, actually, now I don't need to do that as much.
Yeah.
It's interesting talking with Raj, and he's having these kicking competitions with Dan
Carter.
With Dan Carter. But he's just saying, like, listen, you know, it's a great bit of fun. But he said he's watching the amount of practice that Carter does, and he said he doesn't have to do that much anymore.
No.
He goes in, he does, you know, like, you know, I'm picking a figure, say it's 50 kicks, whatever it is, but that is, and he said to himself, is he doesn't need to do the hours now because he has the hours banked, the muscle memory, all that kind of thing. I would have been the same. At certain points in your career, you focus on different things, but then you kind of get a little bit older in your head, and you realize, okay, I'm at a position in my life now that this is what I need to do for games, and this is how I need to prepare in for games. But you can't go to an 18-year-old and go, listen, you'd actually be better off if you did 3 hours here and 3 hours in the afternoon, because for that person at that point in their life or their time, that's not enough for them in their head. So then they're not prepared for it.
The analogy I use is even in my own local club, you know, it's the lads training on the first team, and the 20s have just come through to the senior squad, and they're doing, say, pre-season in the summer, and you get these 19, 20-year-olds, and they're busting a gut to try and be first to everything. They're trying to win all the fitness stats, but, you know, get the highest amount of presses and all that kind of stuff. Whereas the senior lads, I mean, they're looking good when they have to look good, when all the coaches are watching, whatever, but they're not, you know, nearly throwing up after half an hour because they're that bit more cute about how they manage their training.
Yeah, I think as you go on, you know, in your career, you figure out what you need and what your body needs, because certainly in rugby, I think everyone was different, you know, in terms of their endurance, their speed and their pace. And for me, it was always definitely the endurance was a big problem for me.
Really?
So I was always at the back, you know, with Hayes.
It's all right, Wally. You weren't on your own.
No, you were well ahead of me. Don't worry. So when you're back with the props, it's always a sign that you need to work harder. But yeah, so that was always for me, you know, it was an issue I had to work on, and you just figure out, you know, as a career goes on, that's you got to do those kinds of extras rather than, you stuff in the gym or whatever it is. So I think you just learn, and I think towards the end of your career, once you have that experience and you're taking maybe more control as well. You have that ability to take more control. You're not just a sheep as well, like the young fellas who are out there and just do what they're told, and you can take more ownership of it as well.
We've a few questions flying in on social media. Hashtag Aviva FanStudio, by the way, if you want to get involved.
Really interesting one from @Sam74MC. I often wonder who comes up with these Twitter handles, but anyway. Would a promotion relegation in the Six Nations spice things up?
It certainly spice it up. I think it'd be great. You look at the likes of Georgia, in the World Cup.
That's actually the next question from Megan Scully. I better give her a mention @Megan Scully. Are Georgia good enough to enter the Six Nations? She asked.
Hey, we'll put that to all the lads.
They definitely are, and you got to ask why isn't there more of a push? I mean, it's I suppose it's a big money spinner for the home nations. I mean, and that's it's going to be very difficult for these teams to get in there, and that's probably one of the main reasons. But you would say on merit, they certainly deserve a chance. And if you have a relegation there, get these other teams in and spread the rugby gospel.
I know, and Michael Bradley obviously spent some time coaching Georgia before the World Cup, and he mentioned the fact that they need something to aim for to improve themselves, to get investment in, to get guys to commit to what is a long-term program, and something like relegation would be ideal for that.
Absolutely, and I think the answer to this question before the World Cup, I would have said no. But watching those games during the World Cup and all the teams kind of fronting up and challenging the bigger teams, I was like, these guys need to be playing higher level rugby more regularly, and it's the only way they can develop. And the other thing is, I kind of feel like Italy needs something to shake them up a little bit. Year after year, there's talk they'll improve this year, they'll improve that. They're just, I don't feel like they're going anywhere, to be honest.
And it kind of defeats from the competition then, because you find they're really into it the first couple of games, but then they've no interest in that.
Depends where you get them in the competition.
So it can work for you, work against you.
Having a 60-pointer in a game, like Ireland played well at the weekend with 58 points. It doesn't look good for the Six Nations Championship. The other part of it was I was thinking if we were going to have a promotion up to the championship maybe in New Zealand, ramp things up a bit. That could be we could be coming back here to the Northern Hemisphere with our tails between our legs, I'm afraid, but that could really spice things up as well.
And that's this question's been asked, Gordon, about Italy, and I suppose you look over the years at where they finished in the table first of all, but then equally I suppose Zebre and Treviso, what they bring to the Pro 12 and where they finish each year, and the answer is invariably at the bottom end, and you just kind of wonder, do they need a bit of a kick? Is it, can we blame them as such, or I don't know what the answer seems to be, but
yeah, it's a tough one, because you would have said, how long they're in the Six Nations now? Probably 10 years.
More than that even.
It's 15
years. 15 years. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Since 2000, yeah.
I am that old.
You don't look at that. You don't look at
trying to shave a few years off there. You would like to think there is a generation hopefully about to come through of Italian players coming through, but one of the guys I met at the game, and he was saying they're structurally it's hard. Their academies haven't been as developed as they would like to be.
Okay.
To be honest, that's not a big surprise when we see the kind of shambles that's Zebre and Treviso were in, and one of the clubs was liquidated last year, and that shouldn't be happening in a professional organisation. My only fear would be that if we did a promotion and relegation, effectively it's not a promotion relegation. You're effectively talking that Italy are going up or down depending on the year. So it's a one team relegation with Georgia. Would Georgia have the infrastructure and the ability to compete at this? They always compete well at the World Cup. I know that firsthand from 2007, which is
I'll back you up there.
But when we play them outside of that time, outside of that thing on the tours or in the November internationals, we put out a second string team and usually beat them by 30 or 40 points. So I think there is a bit of context in there. Teams do play well in World Cups because there is a certain amount of passion and thing that they can get up for one game in that circumstances. It's hard to figure out what Italy are going to do, but if they went down, you kind of think any work that has been done in the last 15 years, marginal as it might be, will probably be undone because players are kind of go, well, do I really want to play in a second tier tournament in Europe? It is a really hard question to ask.
If not Georgia, Gordon, is there other nations kind of who are up
Romania are going well? I mean, they're reasonable.
Yeah, again, I think there might be scope to even, to something, maybe those in between games that you might start playing the Wolfhounds and England A and things like that might play in those games, so at least they're getting some exposure to it, and almost the threat of relegation to Italy might bring them up. But it's a very, very hard question to answer.
Ken, just like I suppose in any walk of life, and here's the other side of it: if you have a safety net that isn't going to be removed, right, and you know that no matter how you finish every year, you're going to be able to stay in the top tier. I don't think that's a particularly good way to encourage teams to develop. Whereas, if you have a threat of relegation, then you know that if you produce these kind of performances year in, year out, there's going to be a consequence to that.
Yeah, of course. But there's also, the other side of that is also your pride of performance. I think we all have a pride of performance that when you go out and play, nobody wants to get beat by 50 or 60 points out in that field, nobody wants to go out in a snooker match and lose like 5-0 or 6-0 and not really try or not like put in that whole effort. So there is a pride of performance as a sports person that you want to, every time you go out, you really want it, because people are paying to watch you play, so you want to go out and try and give them something to cheer about. So it is a very difficult situation, I suppose, for Italy. They become sort of the whipping boys. And it must be very difficult to get themselves up all the time. But that's up to their team, it's up to their manager, it's up to their coach, it's up to the people around them to try and say, look, you're lucky to be in here, and try and give as best as you can. But it must be very, very difficult. But they used to have it in snooker. I mean, years ago, there was never a dropout system, that the guys that were in there were always in there. There was no relegation and promotion, and probably they got comfortable going back in the long time.
You were one of them.
I was one of those. Yeah. I voted against it completely. Throw that idea in the bin straight away.
Keep the status quo.
We're happy in the top 16. We don't need anybody else. Keep those young fellas away, particularly the Chinese ones. There's too many of them. But no, like they had it back in the 80s before I was born.
That's the spirit. That's the spirit.
And they got a little bit comfortable. So as soon as the promotion and the relegation was introduced, then everybody sort of upped the game and said, they started to practice 10 hours a day. Okay,
couple of questions in for the lads. And the first one I'm going to put to you, Gordon, if you don't mind. What do you think of the performance of Robbie Henshaw? How is he progressing as the Irish number 12? That's from Noreen Reedy, who's in the audience.
Yeah, I think Robbie's done very well. He's probably in that second season where teams know an awful lot more about you. It can be harder to find that little bit of space. I think he's done very well. Everything he's doing well. I think there's much more in the tank. I think we see flashes of it every now and then. I still think he spent a large part of the post World Cup coming into this injured, so I think he's getting better in every game.
Is he a 13 or a 12?
Yeah,
he was brilliant against England.
I think he's a 13.
Really?
I got to say, I think he is not while he's a physically big guy, he is not a battering ram. He's not Jamie Roberts. He's not designed for that. He has exceptional footwork. He's got great distribution skills, but he's got a lovely outside break. I think there's a lot of the things that his really positive moments in games usually come with that extra little bit of space where he can just use that extra. Like I was looking at him quite in detail when I was looking at him, and just that when he has that extra 2 steps, he does a lot more damage. So that's just me. I think he is a long-term 13.
Yeah, and obviously we have the likes of Stuart McCluskey as well, who's flying it for Ulster, and he got his chance against England. He was dropped for the last game. Some people questioning why that was. We've got the likes of Gary Ringrose coming through, and plenty more besides Matt Healy. So, we seem to have a lot of exciting young backs at the moment that have potential to come in and for development.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm saying that Robbie's is a 13, but that question will be asked when Gary Ringrose kind of makes through. But then it puts the pressure on both of them to figure out, okay, well, where their positions are going to be and what the best scenario is going to be. Like I know that firsthand. I started my international rugby as a 13.
Yeah.
I thought never was I thinking I'd be staying there for very long. But you adapt or die. If I was either going to become a number 12 and hopefully a good number 12, or I was going to become the second best number 13 in Ireland, and wait for chances. And as we've seen, the lads got 142 caps for Ireland. I would have been sitting in that I would have been sitting in that comfy chair.
Yeah, can you just talk to us a little bit about Ringrose, because you would have seen a lot of him training. I am getting some music in my ear there. Have you got that?
There's a blank face coming on the two lads now. You're asking forwards about backs.
Yeah. But I suppose, Kevin, just in terms, because you would have seen a bit of him, I suppose, on the training ground. So I'm wondering, have you got an opinion about how good he is?
Yeah, I can't do a technical analysis on his performances like Gordon here, but yeah, like I trained with him during the summer there, during pre-season, and played a couple of games with him, and yeah, he has that little bit of something special about him. He's got a great attitude. All he wants to do is train and play, which is what you want from your young players. And he seems to be just developing and getting better with each game. And, I don't think it takes much to... I mean, he was very impressive in the under-20s competition last year, and I don't think it would take a genius to surmise that he's going to play for Ireland relatively soon. So I think a lot of that will come down to his physical development. He's not a particularly big guy yet.
Okay.
And I know he's doing a lot of work in the gym and trying to really target that at the moment. So I would expect to see him debut next season.
What about Munster then, David? Because Anthony Foley has signed a new extension to his contract, 1-year deal, but that's going to be under a director of rugby from what we understand. How do you think that will go down with him and with the province?
I suppose it depends who it is. He's obviously on board with it, I'd say. Looking at it from the outside, he was new to the role 2 years ago, and he's definitely earning his stripes there. But having a director of rugby will aid him, I think, will take a lot of the pressure off him. That's maybe done outside of the rugby arena and off the pitch.
Okay.
It depends who they get in there and how that dynamic works. So you never know until you try it out. But
would you see it as an endorsement of his training skills as such? But maybe that because Munster is so big that he needs somebody to come in behind the scenes and look after stuff to maybe just keep his mind focused on what's going on the pitch. Is that fair?
Yeah, and Munster is, it's a rare breed. There's two camps. It's untold in how much organisation that takes, and as one head coach, and the way rugby has moved on now, it just puts a massive stress on everyone, on resources, on coaching and organisation, and obviously the more rugby advances in the professional arena, the more difficult that becomes. Obviously, hopefully moving into one centre in UL in the coming months, and that'll obviously
would that help, do you think?
Oh, that will, yeah. I mean, I think for years we got away with it, and in some ways it benefited us. It benefited us. There was a freshness, when we came together for squad sessions. You're meeting up, once or twice a week, and it did keep things that bit fresher, and you're not living in each other's pockets. But when it comes to organisational stuff, which that's where rugby is nowadays. Just look at how Joe Smith trains his teams. It's all about organisation. That you just can't do it when you're separated. So I think that will help, and I think bringing a director of rugby in is probably a smart move, but I don't think it's by any means a reflection on how Axel has been coaching.
There's an immediate pressure though on Munster as things stands. They're outside the top 4 places in terms of qualification for the Champions Cup next season, and we hear obviously the crowds aren't what they were when you were playing, and thus I suppose the finances mightn't be what they were as well. There's a massive pressure that Munster actually get into that top 4 and make sure they're playing in European top table next season. Yeah,
well, obviously, first of all, make sure they're playing in Europe. They have a big chance, this weekend against Cardiff. So, I mean, it doesn't matter. This extra game that has been kind of maybe. As a supporters, we've been clinging on to, we've a game at hand, but it doesn't count for anything unless you win it. And it's a tough game to go over to Cardiff and to get points there. Ulster suffered there recently. I think Leinster were lucky to come away with a win. I think they won by 1 point. So it's by no means going to be easy, but I think the mindset in Munster is now that it's cup rugby, and I think they're going to go out there much hungrier, hopefully.
Would you be worried?
Look, I think you're always worried. You'd like them to be further up the table, but I think they certainly have the capability to if they win this weekend, it'll put them in the top 4. And Munster in the playoffs, you wouldn't bet against them.
Dave from Galway as well says, can any of the guests see a Connacht against Leinster Pro 12 final this season?
I'll answer that first. Connacht, yes, and Connacht will win as well.
It's very much it's very much a possibility the way things are going and the way those two sides are playing.
Yeah, I think it'd be great to see.
Yeah.
Would it be played in the sports ground maybe?
Could well be, yeah. Could well be.
We could have
Connacht Munster would be better though, I
think. I'll stick with the cultures on that
one. All right. Just while you're here, Ken, because I wanted to ask you about this, and we've had somebody in the panel here, in the audience should say in what circumstances is refusing a 147 break acceptable? And this is an issue that has come up, obviously, since Ronnie turned down the chance to go for 147 because he felt that the money on offer basically wasn't worthy of the achievement itself. What's your view on this?
Well, I tell you what, I'd love to be that talented to be able to turn down a 147 and take a 146. And also, I'd love to have as much money to say that 10 grand wasn't that much of it and it wasn't worth the 147 because 10 grand is a lot of money to a lot of people out there. And I think he was, although it was funny, I thought it was quite funny. He was trying to make a point. And I sort of laughed about it, but I couldn't do it myself because, like, okay, to make a 147, it's like making a 9-darter, a hole-in-one or whatever. You know, it's up there with like the greatest thing you could ever do in the sport, like individually. And it's so difficult to do that just for the history, for the nostalgia, for the achievement itself, you can't really put a price on that. So whether it's worth, I got a 147. I missed the 147.
Yeah,
you know, for a car that was worth £80,000, like, you know. But I didn't like the colour of the car, so it didn't really bother me, you know what I mean? But I made a 147 then, the first ever, the only one I've ever made in my career, you know, and I've been a pro now since 1990.
In tournament play?
In tournament play, yeah, in tournament play, yeah. So I made one over in Germany, you know, it was like a professional tournament, and I got 500 quid for it, you know. Now, it wasn't the money. You know, it didn't matter whether I didn't get a penny for it. Just to make that achievement and to have that in your record books, you know, to tick it off was just, that's, you can put a price on that, you know. So for O'Sullivan to do that, I thought it was wrong. It was funny what he did. I know he was trying to make a point, but I certainly wouldn't have done it. And I don't like people when they disrespect the game itself. You know, now Ronnie O'Sullivan, I love him to bits. I'm one of his biggest fans, and he's brilliant for our sport. And you need sort of guys like him in every sport, because whether you like him or not, he sort of creates pages and he creates a lot of attention for the sport, and he brings a lot of fans to the sport as well because they're interested to see what he's going to do next. Is he what, you know, because he's so outrageous, you don't exactly know what he's going to do. So he's a right character, and you need characters in sport, you know. But at the end of the day, it's for entertainment. It's for the people out there who are paying good money. They want to see a 147. They want to see him play at his best. But he still produced the 146, you know what I mean? But you never respect the game itself, and you can't really put a price on that.
I suppose, playing devil's advocate for a minute, because I know you're a massive snooker fan, the people who would have supported Ronnie would have said, well, hang on, this is one of the toughest things to do in any sport. I mean, golf, a hole-in-one is one shot. You know, the perfect game, obviously. This was, every shot had to be measured to perfection. And, you know, he just said 10 grand for one of the hardest things to do in my sport, in any sport. I'm not going to do it for that kind of money.
Yeah, true, but I think Ken, right, 10 grand is a lot of money, Hugh, you know?
Yeah, but for him, it wasn't worth it.
Yeah, well, that's good luck to him if whatever, like, as Ken said, how much money he has.
Do you think it's a slide on the game then? I mean,
I think he disrespected the game, definitely, yeah, 100%. And I love Ronnie O'Sullivan and love snooker, but you wouldn't have seen Stephen Hendry or Steve Davis do that. And it's alright being the best player that ever played the game, but I think you have to carry yourself in such a way where you respect the game. And he's, as Ken said, he's playing, he's the reason fans watch, he's the reason people tune in, and you have to carry yourself in such a dignified way, in a dignified manner that represents being the best player that ever played the game, I think.
But yeah, I mean, but he would argue he still does that. I mean, he would argue, Ken, he still does that.
I think when he
He
did it,
hasn't. Remember,
I think when he did it, I mean, he didn't want to pot a black off a spot for a 147 because the prize, this was gone back even about 6 or 8 years ago, because the prize was even less. Now, we have a rolling system for 147s. It goes up 5 grand for each tournament.
Yeah.
So because Neil Robertson made one in the final of the UK back in December, that, you know, it was only 10 grand because there's only 2 ranking tournaments since then. So that's why it was so low. But Neil Robertson got 50,000 for it. But he refused to pot a black off a spot for a 147 as well because the prize was so low. But the referee made him pot the black, so he just got down and potted the black. But it's just an amazing thing to do. And for him as well, I think he understood afterwards, and I think he felt a bit sorry, and he said it wasn't about the money. If I make one, I'll give the money to charity. And anyway, but I just think he got caught up in the moment. He likes to court a little bit of controversy at times, you know.
Well, funny enough, Ken, a couple of days later, Ding Junhui done a 147 in the exact same tournament, and he didn't turn it down.
He won the 10 grand.
He didn't. But the funny thing was, like, there were debates on Sky Sports News.
Yeah,
it was in all the broadsheets, full pages. You know, they were having phone-ins on the BBC News.
More publicity.
And Ding Junhui made a 147 2 days later, and not a word said. You know what I mean? So it just goes to show you.
Yeah. Okay. Would you like to be a young guy starting out in a career the way snooker is now with Barry in charge?
Oh yeah. I mean, snooker is in the best probably situation that's ever been in. You know, when Barry took over, we had 6 ranking tournaments. You know, and maybe like about 4 or 5 invitational tournaments. Now we'll have probably about 12 ranking tournaments next year, and about maybe 10 or 12 other tournaments as well. So the guys have got great opportunities to play, almost like 2 or 3 tournaments a month almost. You know, so the opportunities are vast. The game has grown and grown and grown in China, all across mainland Europe as well. I did an exhibition in Romania last week. Never been there, and there were like 2,000 people turned up. You know? Now I was playing John Higgins, so we're probably turned up to watch him, but it was still amazing. But the growth of Eurosport has really grown the game.
What about Irish? What about Irish players coming through? Do you see that that is transferring over to Ireland? Do you think?
Unfortunately, I don't see enough of it.
No.
I mean, we had Josh Ballou win the European Under-21 Championship this about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and he's going to join the main tour next year. But I'd love to see a lot more. You know, I go into my own snooker club and I don't see a lot of young kids coming in, which is a shame, like, you know. But the growth of the game in Ireland and the UK is diminishing, you know. But around the world, it's like thriving. Yeah,
I've been over, if anyone ever gets a chance, I've been over to the Crucible with Ken, and I'm going over again in April. And as much as I love football as my number one sport, snooker, if anyone ever gets the opportunity to go to the Crucible, it's the most amazing place you will ever go to. And I've been to World Cups, been in all the stadiums around the world watching football, and the Crucible is the most unbelievable place you will ever be. The television does it no justice whatsoever. When you're there, you could hear it. Ken was playing, we went over the first year, and we just happened to be the weekend that he was playing Stuart Bingham, and he came back out in the second session and he was 5-4 down, and we all put a few quid on him as well to win. And we were roaring down at him. And he could literally turn around and wave up at us. Like, you're that close to him. It's like, it's the size of this room. It's just unbelievable.
Okay, Alan, okay. You're getting your tickets this year. All right. Right. You can tell he didn't pay for them last year, right?
There's tickets in the house.
He's looking for more freebies.
Keep your question coming in. We've only got a few minutes left. Hashtag Aviva FanStudio to get involved. Follow at GameOn 2FM. And we just before, you know, we'll keep it going. Alan, you're going to read out a couple of questions there. But just in terms of the match then this weekend, Gordon, like, what are you expecting? Scotland, they're coming here, and after beating France, we're just after putting 58 points past Italy. It's the perfect storm, really, and there's a lot on the line here.
Yeah, it is. Like, you know, you look back at this, it's very much this will be a retrospectively judged tournament for us and for Scotland. Whoever wins this game gets the 2 wins. We have a draw, but our tournament you could actually take a huge amount of positives from it if we get a result and a performance. I think at this weekend, if we get a result with a poor performance, it'll kind of hang in the balance. If we get a result with a good performance, you can say lots of lessons learned. Scotland are going to want to. They finally got their win in the Six Nations, and they're coming here to play. They've said that. There's a huge amount of subplots across the game. Both forward packs have actually gotten their act together. Their scrums are both functioning quite well. Yeah. Their lineouts are now. But we had a good performance in the lineout. You know, both of our second rows miraculously had their best games after Ultil Danan's cameo of 20 minutes. Very funny that. Simon Zebo, fantastic from fullback. Coming in late for Rob, did brilliant. Not tested defensively, but he did everything he could do to get Ireland on the front foot. He was the catalyst for that length of the field try. Yeah. Great little bit of individuality on the front foot, a little flick pass, but everything he did, he did well, and players played well. Scotland are a different animal. They lost their playmaker within 4 minutes. Peter Horne came in. The whole back line took pressure off him. The centres carried, like Dunbar and Taylor, they are big units. They are both over 6'2", 6'3", and they carry their Route 1 centres. They carry very hard. They're both fast. And Stuart Hogg has just been magnificent for this whole Six Nations. I think he is just, every time he's carried the ball, he has had positive moments. He can kick the ball an absolute country mile. And he just looks for mismatches. And he's one of the few players in rugby at the moment that can actually, like the Sculler for New Zealand.
Milner Sculler, yeah.
I was going to tackle that name. I've embarrassed myself enough recently.
Listen, we have to ask you about that. I couldn't let it go.
But yeah, so I think there's a huge comparative between the two teams. I think the 6-day turnaround is going to hurt Scotland, but I do think home advantage. And we're playing well. I think Johnny Sexton is really he has gotten better in every game. So I do think we have enough to share. shade it this weekend.
Was O'Driscoll on to you, slagging you about the weekend?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
We'll move swiftly on, Kevin. What do you think of Scotland this weekend?
I'm expecting an absolute cracker of a game. I think if the weather is anything like it was last week, both teams are going to go out and play. Scotland are playing possibly the best rugby of the tournament in the way that they're attempting to play the game anyway. Joe's obviously been listening to the media a bit and opened things up a bit with Ireland based on the way we played against Italy. We were running from our 22 and I think the players are given a licence to play. Zebo was given a licence to throw an offload, and it was really refreshing to look at.
Do you think the media influence him in that?
If we were to ask Joe now, he'd say no, obviously, but I think it's impossible not to. And I think the media, while they get a lot of things wrong, they do draw some good conclusions. So I think Joe will be smart in what he does and doesn't take from it. And it's inevitable that he'll come to some of the same conclusions as the media do as well. And the game has gone down a certain path at this stage where if we want to be able to compete against the Southern Hemisphere teams, we need to up our skill levels. We need to be able to offload because there's no space out there.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to create space, and you're not creating space by running into brick walls. Tackle techniques and defenses are so good now that you have to have a way of getting around those brick walls. But so in answer to your question, I'm expecting a cracker of a game. I'm expecting Ireland to win though. 6-day turnaround, as Doris mentioned earlier, is huge in the context of these things in an international game. So good weather, good game, good atmosphere, and an Ireland win hopefully.
Okay, last word to you, David.
Yeah, I think the 7 battle is going to be a real cracker.
Yeah, Hardy
and if Lear's playing as well, 2 real out and out 7s, and
you do know there's other people on the pitch.
I never noticed.
It's like me going, it's all about the 12s. We get it.
You got to give me something, It's my niche.
So who's going to come out on top between the 7s?
Hopefully Van Fleer, obviously, but Hardy is a good player. I mean, a lot of people tipping him for Lions and all that, next year. So that's I think that's going to be a big one. Strauss and Stander, if those guys are playing as well. I think Denton is out, so two good 8s as well. So I think it's going to be a real battle there. But I'd like to see Ireland play like they did expansively the last day, because I think that'll put Scotland under pressure.
Brilliant. Okay, so Ireland to beat Scotland this weekend, Arsenal to beat Barcelona in the Champions League tonight, Thistle Crack to win the World Hurdle, Vator to win the Ryanair, and
we'll be laughing.
All right, listen, thanks ladies and gentlemen to our panel tonight, to Gordon, to Ken, to Kevin, to David and to Alan Colley. Thanks to our friends in Aviva. Continue the conversation on social media, #Aviva FanStudio. We'll see you again very soon. Good night and good luck.